first glance, the loose cannon seems somewhat straightforward. Okay, so the loose cannon has a 20% faster projectile speed, cannonballs do knockback, they don't explode on contact, but hitting someone with the projectile and the explosion from that projectile will cause, double dong. What, that wasn't straightforward for you? Because it's not. This weapon is like trying to operate a 50-part quantum toaster, so of course it's gonna be a bit complex. How do I turn it off? The loose cannon is one of the more complex weapons in Team Fortress 2, next to the Huntsman with its slow projectile speed, and the weapon choosing if it wants to headshot or not. I mean, just ask Lazy Purple.
Sprayed in his head, but apparently that's not good enough anymore. How is this not directly in his giant head?
Considering this is a video about the loose cannon, I should probably decomplex some of the complexities surrounding its weapon stats. So let's start doing just that. 20% faster projectile speed. Fact. 20% faster projectile speed. It's very straightforward. This thing fires faster projectiles than this thing does. Or does it? Turns out, due to Source Engine shenanigans, the loose cannon's projectile actually travels slower than the stock grenade launcher's pill. So in reality, this stat should more or less look like this.
I've been lied to!
I honestly think this should be a neutral stat rather than a positive stat, because sometimes the knockback prevents you from getting a double donk, and other times the knockback combos with an explosion's passive knockback, allowing you to send people into the stratosphere. I didn't list this stat in the beginning of the video, primarily due to pacing purposes, but essentially this stat can be broken off into two parts. The first part of this stat is the 1 second fuse time. This is a notable downside from the stock grenade launcher's 3 second fuse time, but this shouldn't be too much of a problem if your playstyle isn't primarily spamming nades from half the map away. But if it is, just use Soldier or Sniper, they're much better for that. This stat has never been a problem for me personally, as I use the loose cannon basically all the time. As in, when I first played Demo Man, I used the loose cannon, and now I can't use another grenade launcher because it doesn't feel as good as the loose cannon amount of use. The next part of this stat is being able to reduce the fuse time of your projectiles by holding down the primary fire button, or as I like to call it, fourth dimensional projectile leading. What this basically means is that along with predicting your opponent's X, Y, and Z movement, this is a 3D game after all, you also have to take into account how long or short you want your fuse time to be. Too short and the projectile won't even hit them, or just the explosion will hit them. Too long and just the projectile will hit and send them flying, or the explosion will still hit them, but the time between the direct hit and the explosion will have been too long to let a double donk happen. Projectiles fired by this weapon don't immediately explode upon hitting another player. Next scene! Double donk. Double donk. Double donk! The biggest thing that the loose cannon has over the other grenade launchers is its ability to one-shot light classes.
Oh, so nice! Ha!
That might save you from the initial double donk, but if you get blasted into the air, that sure as heck won't save you from the fall damage, NG.
Darn.
The knockback on the loose cannon's projectile also serves as a good way to get WM1 pyros out of your face.
Oh no.
Hey Spy, be careful when waving your dead ringer around in the face of loose cannon users, because the projectile from it can activate your dead ringer while the double donk from the explosion will cause your true death.
No!
Let's jump back to the pyro for a second. There are actually a few other aspects about the loose cannon that make it a really good anti-pyro weapon. Because the loose cannon's fuse time is already shortened, combined with the fact that you can shorten it further, this can trip up pyros when they try to air blast your cannonballs back, whether it explode too far in front of them, or they manage to reflect it, but the fuse time is shortened down to the point where it just ends up blowing up in their face anyway, which can result in some funny deaths.
Medics, if they're alone, easy pickings. If they have a pocket, I wouldn't recommend taking them on. You can try and use the knockback to separate the medic from the pocket, or vice versa, but I wouldn't recommend doing so unless you have some teammates to back you up. Because the loose cannon is more direct hit focused, if your projectile leading isn't up to snuff, you might find yourself missing more than anything else. This is compounded tenfold by scouts. They may have low health, but they are fast and have a double jump which they can use in various ways, with several unlocks that can boost this even more. The loose cannon also struggles at building destruction, as the projectile will most likely hit the building but bounce away from it, sparing the building from most of the explosion damage. But most demos carry a sticky bomb launcher, so they have their bases covered. The cannonballs fired from this weapon have a somewhat larger hitbox, which can make it easier to get direct hits, and if the fuse is timed right, double donks. Sadly, more often than not, the larger projectile will clip on edges, which can impair corner peeking or shooting over walls. I guarantee you've seen at least one loose cannon demo blow themselves up because of this. When playing with the loose cannon, try and engage foes at the range at which your cannonball is about to explode on its own. This will allow you to get double donks without touching the fuse whatsoever. Playing around tight areas in maps such as tunnels or hallways is also highly beneficial, as the less area there is to move, the harder it is to juke projectile weapons, especially ones that rely on head-on impacts. This is the reverse case in wide open areas. It's not impossible to direct hit someone, it's just harder as there are more options for that opponent to dodge or juke the shot. Keep an eye out for players who will try to take you on at point-blank range, not only for the reason of blowing yourself up, but also you have to charge the loose cannon to shorten its fuse to pull off a double donk at that range, which could be all the time your foe needs to kill you. Instead, just dry fire and use the knockback to force your opponent to an ideal range, or just pull out your frying pan and beat them to death with it.
Oh no!
Big thank you to Manface and Inksplash for helping me with the creation of this video. It took a few months, but I'm really happy with the results. That being said, I'm most likely never going to do something like this again. But if this is well received enough, I'll think about it. I don't really have much else to say here. Just roll the outro. I said roll the outro. What are you doing? I said roll the outro.